hope you don't mind me sharing this story with you. It was Friday morning when my wife told me she was going out that night after work and wouldn't be back until the next day. She had a lot to say and she said it well. I was convinced there was nothing I could do about it. She said she still loved me, but her gaze was distant. This was my first experience with marital infidelity. I had heard about it in movies, books, plays, and even gossip. In real life, I listened to her carefully rehearsed arguments about how I was strong enough to take it, how it was unfair that she didn't have time to prepare before she got married, that humans aren't meant to be monogamous, and that society is too rigid about love. She also had a lot to say about love, and how it should be, and how I should let her do whatever she wants. I told her I wasn't going to let her do it, and she moved on to something else. She also brought up some tired old cliches, like that I have no choice, that she can do whatever she wants with her body, that life is short and she deserves all the pleasure she can get, and that she has the right to satisfy even the need to try different things. Her selective menu doesn't include brain size or the size of her capital. I'm not saying I was poorly endowed, nor would I say I was physically weak or soft in character. Is there any way to modestly say that I have at least average intelligence and a large wallet? Well, then, I'm a rocket scientist, and my work has made me obscenely wealthy. My wife had when the former love of my life finished her statement, I could have reacted with the brute force of a huge beast. I felt the rage within me. I could have taken on the role of Ahab, a revenge-hungry king with a superiority complex obsessed with defeating the great beast. But we know that story ended in destruction. Melville had a better model. Even though the message of this story was so unclear, it has been a subject of contemplation throughout my life. The meaning of its strange central character suddenly became clear to me when my wife asked me to kiss her goodbye. I mentally thanked Herman Melville for the Bartleby lesson. I would have preferred not to. We all have moments in life where everything seems so strange that we can't help but speak up. It's as if our brains are having trouble processing what we've seen, and we're so eager to share our thoughts that we just have to say something. My wife's jaw dropped, and her mouth opened grotesquely. I was filled with a desire to discuss morals, oaths, and expressions of devoted love or threats of violent retribution. However, I found that simply saying, "I'd rather not," was enough. People often have a power that is underestimated and rarely even considered as a strength. This power is the gift of self-control. "I'd rather not do that" was my control over the situation. After exercising that control, I was treated to a new TI range about not respecting her needs, my immature resentment about this and that, and ending by saying I'd rather not. I noticed a crack in her armor. She began to falter slightly, trying her best to look determined. I didn't threaten her, didn't beg, didn't cry, didn't explode with indignation. Then she began to negotiate. She promised she wouldn't go out all night on her first date. Instead, she would come home and assure me of her deep love for me. I'd rather not do that. That stunning phrase was the encore. The wife switched from soft mistress to lawyer. She might never be one. She had as much trouble passing the bar exam as I did. I'm pretty sure she didn't remember one of her law school classes from the year before we got married. Back then, the entire class drafted prenuptial agreements for personal use. She took it very seriously at the time. She signed the contract, had it notarized, and it was fully enforceable when she went out on her next date. She said that if I wanted a divorce, she would take my house, my bank account, and even my trust fund. She said that I would end up in my house in my bed, sleeping with whoever she wanted, whenever she wanted. I had a simple answer: I'd rather not. She didn't come back that night so I could reclaim her body. She didn't come home on Saturday afternoon or Saturday night. The sun was just setting on Sunday night when she dragged herself into the house. She looked like a wild animal had just driven her onto the rocks. She dumped her bag on the patio of our house next to the grill, where I had a nice sizzling ribeye cooking. I didn't even bother to look in her direction. I figured you'd rather not kiss me now, right? I went about my business. I was just finishing up with the marinade on the sizzling meat and turning the corn a quarter turn when you asked if I would mind cooking one of those for you. I told you I'd rather not, and you should have known. Are you ever going to say anything else besides I'd rather not? It gets tiresome very quickly. I turned to. I was about to say something when she beat me to it. No, don't even talk about it. I'm tired. It's better if you don't do it. That's the punishment. It's going to be a long night because we have to talk about it, and you're going to have to say something. Nothing is off the table. That's it then. You're going to file for divorce. We've been dating for 2 years at college, 3 years while I was in law school, and 2 years after that. 5 years of marriage, and 7 years together. You give that up in 2 weekends while I research something else. I needed it. It's been eating away at me for years. I thought it was all said when I married you. I love you and will love you forever, but I couldn't be around another guy without wondering how good he was in bed and questioning how it felt to be cherished instead of fixed. I needed to feel and understand the differences to be the girl on the cover of a love story with a rough cowboy. He does whatever he wants to her, or the lord of the manor exercises his rights over me, a humble peasant girl. I'm sorry, but I couldn't help myself. You're a wonderful husband and a wonderful lover, but I should have seen it coming. I should have tried other men. Oh, baby, I'm so sorry. Please don't just stand there in silence. Say something. I put the steak in a cob of corn on a toasted bun and another grilled peach on top and turned to look at my wife for the first time. It's been a while since she came back. I'd rather not do that. Don't be so cold to me. Don't yell, threaten, or hit me. Just don't ignore me. I know I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I'll do anything for you. Just take me back. I'd rather not. Things got heated after that. No, I didn't. I thought about cooking her a steak, but in the days that followed, she tried to talk, but every request she made was met with a quietly polite response. She asked me what I would have preferred to do, and I simply shrugged. I didn't leave the room if she tried to talk to me, and I didn't ask her what had happened. You could tell she was desperate to gain my favor. The following Friday, she came home a little late, talking at a mile a minute about a happy hour with her CO workers. She was drinking and laughing with her colleagues. She noticed there was nothing on the table and got dressed to leave the house. She asked where we were going and if she was coming with us. I shook my head and gave her the standard answer. I'd rather not, so I left. I went out to dinner with my parents, who were in town for the weekend. I put them up at the Hilton by the river because I didn't want to involve them in our drama at home. They already knew all about it, and were happy to have a wonderful evening with dinner on a river cruise. I got home at 10, just to give you a rough idea. It was around 30 p.m. I still looked like I had it together, but my wife was crying when I got home. I went to bed, but I don't know what was going on in her head. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of breakfast she had made. My wife didn't question me about anything before she spoke. Last night was awful. You left without me and I was left home alone. I couldn't get rid of the thought of you being in town with another woman. I felt awful now I realize. I'd like to know how you felt when I was away all weekend. If I ask you a question, will you answer me honestly? Were you with another woman? I've dated both of my parents, and my mom is definitely a woman I've been with. She answered honestly, yes. Her face reflected mixed emotions. She now knew that I had dated another woman last night, and that filled her mind with anxiety. On the other hand, I had said something else, something new. It was a good conversation. I had breakfast and then picked up my golf clubs. I went out to play golf with my father. He was in his 42nd, but he was playing like he was in his prime at one time. My dad won an award for coaching Special Olympics locally for many years and then serving as the state team director during the game. We talked about everything but my marriage. I got home just in time to shower and get dressed for dinner with my wife. As I was coming down the stairs and heading towards the garage, she saw me wearing my tuxedo. She was really surprised, and I was pleased to see her jaw drop open. She must be really special to get a night worthy of a tuxedo. I nodded and said, "Honey, I have to tell you that no one. You know, when you dress like that, all of our anniversary dinners have been pretty unforgettable. She's a lucky girl, whoever she is. I don't suppose you want to share with me?" I'd rather not, but I understand. I screwed up. I tossed you aside, and then spent the weekend humiliating you. I should have done things differently. I've never done anything like that before. I'll always regret what I did. On Friday, I went to the concert with my wife. On the way there, I got a burger from Wendy's. He told me we had great seats, so I dressed well and made an effort. You saw me. I was nice. It turned out that our seats were so far away from the stage that I couldn't see I even had to use binoculars to see him. So he made me buy a beer. Well, I was driving the whole way. It was my car, it was my gas, and then I bought dinner anyway. My first date in my big adventure happened with the cheapest guy in the state on the way home. He started groping me with his hands. So when I waited until he stopped at a red light at an intersection and then jumped out of the car. I went to McGuire's Lounge, where a blues band was playing. The guy tried to follow me, but you know Eric, the bouncer who works there when they have live bands playing. I told him the guy was a creep. I was surprised to see that he was following me. I hadn't promised him anything. When I went into the restaurant, I saw a guy I knew from work. He was there with some friends. We hung out and I went to his house, but he was so drunk I had to drive him myself. When we got to his house, it turned out I was looking at the worst case of a hangover ever. Then he just passed out and I had to sleep on his couch. I woke up this morning to him crawling all over me and telling me he would make it up to me. I responded by telling him how he would ever be able to ever make it up to me, with his little outgrowth. That's when I made a mistake. I should have been clearer and appreciated what I had at home. Instead, I decided to reassert my femininity and sexuality. I went to the bar to hook up with a guy, but his wife barged in. She was furious and red. I slapped him and yelled, "So you're married?" I didn't take off my rings. Then I went to the Clam Shack bar on the beach. A man approached me there, flirting like crazy. He was so sweet. He made conversation. He could look me in the eye instead of just ogling my body. I was about to fall for his bait when two little kids came running up to the table screaming, "Grandpa, Grandpa, there you are." I can't tell you how quickly. He disappeared. I ended up getting a room in an old motel behind the Clam Shack, bought a bottle of wine, and went out on the balcony for a drink and some quiet time to think. It turned out there was a table full of single and divorced women on the terrace directly below me. They were talking about men and their dating failures. They were naming names and giving details. It came out that my experiences were pretty common. They were talking about misogynists, older lechers, and cheap bastards. And cheapskates. That's what they said men were. Well, I can't blame them much for that. I mean, a girl can hardly expect a man to treat her as an equal and that he will pay for everything. These women on the terrace went through a long list of experiences with married men and men who seemed to be devoted family men. But for whatever reason, things didn't work out. Then they turned to the physical diversity of the men they dated. They talked about dating guys from other. They talked about how important it is to find a partner who is caring, regardless of their culture, race, religion, or political views. They agreed that if you can find someone who is kind and loving, you should hold on to them. I almost left to come home to you, but I stayed to hear the rest of their conversation. I spent the rest of the night thinking about you. I woke up. I was on the balcony when I saw the sun was already up and shining in my face. It was already starting to burn my skin, and I felt lousy on so many levels. I was consumed by guilt over what I'd made you experience. My body was stiff from sleep. I'd slept curled up on a sofa on the balcony. My stomach was upset from the disgusting food and 2 bottles of wine I'd consumed the night before. My head was aching from all of the above. I made arrangements for a late checkout. I checked out and went back to bed. When I woke up, I showered, got dressed, and came home. Honey, that night I walked out of our house into the street with the intention of cheating on you, but I didn't. The universe was on your side, baby. It made it clear that I was meant to be with you. Only you. Please forgive me. Please let me still be your wife. Please let's forget my transgression and go back to our happy life. Please. Her eyes filled with tears. I felt sorry for her. But I didn't feel love. I looked into her eyes, into the eyes of the woman I had loved for so long, and gave her my answer. I would have preferred not to. I didn't tell her that this other woman I was dating was my mother. I didn't tell her if I believed her sad story about how her dreams crumbled that weekend. I told her I loved her because I wasn't sure. I didn't say anything else. She didn't give up on me. She tried to get back into my heart while I managed to avoid her by traveling for work or staying in town after a long day. I only answered her questions with a nod, nodding yes or shaking my head no, but nothing more. I slept in a different room and ate at different times with her. Eventually, she got tired of the struggle. We never divorced, but in the aftermath, she went to live somewhere else. I think I will put an endo someday, but for now I'd rather not.